This is Chris Lee of Southeastern 14 here to preview Week 3 college football in the SEC. We are talking about Georgia Tech and Ole Miss right now. Tech visits Oxford in a rematch of last year's game, which Ole Miss won 42-0. This game is going to be 6:30 Central. You can see it on the SEC network. Georgia Tech comes in 1-1, having lost to Louisville in a close game, and Ole Miss 2-0, having just gone on the road and beaten Tulane in a game where both teams really had some issues with injuries. So look forward to seeing this one in a rematch of last year. I think it should be a little bit better and certainly more interesting game. Let's start when Georgia Tech has the ball. The Yellow Jackets under Brent Key. And by the way, Brent Key has done a tremendous job. He took over last year after that Ole Miss debacle and took Georgia Tech to a 4-4 record that included a couple of wins over ranked teams in UNC and Pitt. So if we're looking back on last year as maybe being indicative of a mismatch for this year, I think maybe we've missed the point there. So just want to get that out of the way. Georgia Tech, when it's got the ball, is scoring 41 points a game. It is running the ball 51% of the time. It is turning it over 2.9% of the time. That needs to come down a little bit. Ole Miss is forcing turnovers on 3.3% of snaps. That's really good. Georgia Tech is averaging 6.5 yards per rushing play. Ole Miss giving up 2.5. Georgia Tech averaging 9.1 per passing play. Ole Miss is giving up 5.5. And Ole Miss's defense, not the strong suit of the team. C.J. Johnson, I think their linebacker, still out. Really, Ole Miss's bread was supposed to be better buttered on the offensive side. Although that defense in game one against Mercer was pretty good for whatever that's worth. But anyway, Ole Miss has gotten a couple of big plays out of its defense so far. DeAndre Prince had a big interception in return last week. That was a big play, and that went over Tulane. So Ole Miss is not going to be a team that probably leads the country in total defense at year's end, but it has made some plays at right times, and that's often a big thing that goes towards winning or losing at games. All right, Georgia Tech's offense has been really good so far. And this is a team, as we said in the stats, can beat you running the ball or throwing the ball. When it throws, Haynes King is a name that SEC fans will know because last year he played at Texas A&M for a couple of years. So far, he has thrown for 603 yards and 7 touchdowns. They have had a couple of receivers, actually 3 receivers, over 100 yards in 2 games. However, one of them is Chase Lane. He may be out this game. I think is going to be out this game. So that's something to watch. Tech has run the ball pretty well. Jamal Haynes has run 20 times for 164 yards and a score that's 8.2 a carry. Trey Cooley not far behind him at 19 for $145 and 3 scores, 7.6 a carry. So I think Ole Miss's rush defense has been pretty good so far. And again, consider the opposition. But if Ole Miss can get Georgia Tech in the 3rd and long, and Ole Miss's pass defense has been pretty respectable on a per-play basis. We'll see if that holds up in this game against a better offense. But really wanting to see how Georgia Tech runs the ball because that could determine a little bit of tempo. We know Ole Miss likes to play tempo, keep its defense off the field. If Georgia Tech can run the ball a little bit against an Ole Miss defense that hasn't run the ball so well, and again, Tech missing a receiver, be very interested to see what Brent Key can do there to control tempo. Okay, when Ole Miss has got the ball, the Rebels have just been fantastic so far, at least throwing the ball. We'll get to the running part in a minute. Ole Miss averaging 55 points a game, Georgia Tech giving up 26. Ole Miss has got exactly a 50-50 split between running and passing, and Ole Miss is running the ball 3 yards, 4 yards per rushing attempt. Georgia Tech giving up 5.6. Ole Miss averaging 11.6 yards per passing play. And again, that takes sacks off. Tech giving up 6.8, which isn't great. So based on the numbers, you would think that Ole Miss would want to throw the ball in this game. Ole Miss turning it over 1.5% of the time. Georgia Tech giving up or forcing turnovers 2.4% of the time. But we all know Ole Miss has got Quinshon Judkins, just has not been able to get him untracked in the running game. Maybe the best running back in America coming in. And Tech has not been great on defense and stopping the run. So I'm very interested to see what Ole Miss does. Does it say, hey, we can run the ball better than we've run the ball because we know what Judkins is? We've done it in the past. And Ole Miss actually was more of a run-heavy team last year. I think if you look at the numbers, that's just from memory, but I'm pretty sure Ole Miss ran the ball a good bit more than it threw it a year ago. So this is a little bit of a surprise seeing where Ole Miss is having some success. Now, that points to Jackson Dart and how much he has developed as a quarterback. But again, if you'd said 2 games in that Ole Miss is running for 3.4 yards per rushing play, I think all of us would have been surprised. The other factor for Ole Miss is just health. Franklin, Trey Harris have both been out. Harris got injured in the Tulane game. He, of course, the kid that caught, 4 touchdowns the first 3 minutes, or 3 touchdowns the first 4 minutes against Mercer. Michael Trigg, there's tight end transfer from Southern Cal, was good against Tulane, but he's been erratic. Caden Priestcorn was the transfer from Memphis at tight end that I think they thought would help them a lot. He's been hurt. So I'm doing this Wednesday morning. I don't know how the injuries shake out or don't shake out between now and then, but those are just some things to watch. Bottom line in this one, the over-under on this is 63.5 points. Ole Miss is favored by 18.5. Right now, that makes for a predicted final score of 41-23 in Ole Miss's favor. If you're wondering what some computers say, ESPN's FPI has Ole Miss favored by 20. SP Plus has Ole Miss by 26 and Sagarin by 22. So interesting here that the odds makers have that line several points lower than what the computers have. I would imagine some of that is just looking at Georgia Tech and going, hey, this is a much better team than it was a year ago. Some of that I'm sure is probably factoring in injuries. But look, I think Ole Miss wins this game. Is Ole Miss going to win it by 19 points? I don't know about that. Georgia Tech has just been so much better under Brent Key. It moves the ball pretty well. Ole Miss's defense is a little bit of a question mark at this point, although statistically it's been pretty good. It has not seen an offense maybe as good as Georgia Tech's. You could say Tulane, but Tulane had a quarterback injury, so we could argue that point. Point is, though, I think that Georgia Tech has been scoring some points. It did it to Louisville. I also don't know that I trust Georgia Tech's defense to slow down Ole Miss a lot, given what happened in the Louisville game. Louisville threw for 247 yards, ran for 227 in a 39-34 victory. So, look, I don't bet on games. I'm not a professional at this. I think 63.5, though, might not be enough, given the way these teams move the ball. I like Ole Miss to win. I'm not sure, based on how tough Georgia Tech has been under Key, maybe 19 points is enough. Maybe not. I'm just saying be a little bit wary of that because Tech has been really, really competitive and played some good football. But if you're Ole Miss, hey, you're also feeling great about what you've done so far with the injuries, with the failures of the running game. Dart has really taken a step up as a quarterback, it would appear. And I think folks, Ole Miss fans, came out last week very excited about that win, and for good reason. In any case, we are going to predict every single SEC football game for the season involving SEC and FBS teams. Best way to do that, hit that subscribe button. We've still got more to come on some of the lesser games, so we'll get to those. I am Chris Lee for Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon with more Southeastern Conference football content.